It's now time for Trivia Tracks with yours truly, Price Robertson. This edition of Trivia Tracks is brought to you by ProMed Ambulance Services, care you can count on, and Beth Smith at Edward Jones, making sense of investing, member SIPC. He is widely considered one of the greatest country singers who ever lived. Lefty Frizzell set the style of singing the country way, opening doors for future stars such as George Jones, Merle Haggard, and Randy Travis. No doubt his music was much more mainstream, without losing its honky-tonk attitude and persona. William Orville Frizzell was born March 31st, 1928 in Corsicana, Texas. The first of 8 children, Frizzell grew up in El Dorado, Arkansas. As a child, he was called Sonny, but he later took the name Lefty. It was believed they called him Lefty because he had won a neighborhood fight. However, it turned out that this tale was part of a fake publicity stunt set up by his record label. Growing up, Frizzell listened to records by Jimmie Rodgers. He began singing professionally before his teens, even earning a spot on El Dorado radio station KELD. His teenage years were spent singing in nightclubs and radio and talent shows throughout the South. He soon developed a style of his own, shaped by artists like the aforementioned Jimmie Rodgers, Ernest Tubb, and Ted Daffin. In 1947, the 19-year-old Frizzell was put behind bars for having sex with an underage fan. He had been married only a year, and filled with guilt, he wrote poems to his wife from his cell. One of them would become his first big record. After his release, in late 1949, he went back to the oil fields with his father, but soon began performing in nightclubs again, including a regular job at the Ace of Clubs in Big Spring, Texas, where one day, Jim Beck, the owner of a Dallas recording studio, spotted Frizzell and invited him to cut some demos, including If You've Got the Money, I've Got the Time, which caught the attention of producer Don Law at Columbia Records. Law liked the cut and signed Frizzell. The song became a two-sided smash hit in 1950 upon its release. The B-side was the song Frizzell wrote to his grief-stricken wife from jail, I Love You a Thousand Ways. Those two songs launched him into stardom, and within 2 years, he had registered 13 top 10 country hits. He went on tour with Hank Williams during this period, and had become one of the only people that could be considered to match the popularity of Williams. He landed spots on the Grand Ole Opry and the Louisiana Hayride. But despite his massive success, things began to get worse for Frizzell. He fired his manager and his band, was involved in an automobile accident, and moved to Los Angeles, where he earned a spot on the city's popular country music TV show Town Hall Party. Having had few hits for part of the 1950s, he felt burnt out and had little energy for his career. Though he toured extensively, he settled on music publishing, but soon made it back to the top 10 with The Long Black Veil, released in 1959. He later returned to Nashville, eventually scoring some minor hits. By 1964, country music was going through an eclipse. The pop-influenced Nashville sound had already hit the mainstream, and the era of honky-tonk singers like Lefty Frizzell was dying out. He did, however, manage to snag one more #1 hit with Saginaw, Michigan. In 1965, She's Gone, Gone, Gone was his last top 20 hit. Frizzell began a downward spiral after developing an alcohol problem. He recorded many songs, but Columbia released very few. Because of his declining record sales, he began to perform less. In 1972, he left Columbia and signed with ABC Records. That same year, he was inducted into the Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame. He eventually developed chronic hypertension. His appearance changed drastically, and his voice had deteriorated. On July 19, 1975, Frizzell died of a massive stroke at the age of 47. In 1982, he was posthumously inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. By that time, his younger brother David had already established himself as a country artist, with several hits of his own. Till next time, I'm Price Robertson. Amazed by today's trivia? Then join me for Trivia Tracks weekdays at 6:45 on Everybody's Country Y95.